Tonight, we're taking a detailed look at a major legal development in the United States that could have long-term consequences for trade policy, presidential authority, and the balance of power in Washington. The Supreme Court of the United States has reportedly invalidated significant portions of tariff measures introduced during the presidency of Donald Trump. This decision does not just concern trade numbers or import taxes, it raises deeper constitutional questions about how much authority a U.S. president has when imposing economic restrictions, and where Congress fits into that picture. Let's break it down carefully and clearly. What were these tariffs? During his presidency from 2017 to 2021, Donald Trump pursued what he described as an America First trade strategy. A central part of that strategy involved placing tariffs on a wide range of imported goods. These tariffs were introduced under existing trade laws, including Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act and Section 301 of the Trade Act. Those laws allow the executive branch to impose trade restrictions under certain conditions, such as national security concerns or unfair trade practices. Steel and aluminum imports were among the first major targets. Later, a wide array of Chinese goods faced additional duties. The administration argued that these steps were necessary to protect domestic industries and address trade imbalances. Supporters believed the tariffs would strengthen American manufacturing and encourage companies to invest domestically. Critics argued they increased costs for businesses that relied on imported materials and, in some cases, led to higher prices for consumers. Why were they challenged? Over time, various companies, trade associations, and importers filed legal challenges. Their arguments generally focused on two main points: whether the president exceeded the authority granted by Congress, whether proper legal procedures were followed when expanding or modifying the tariffs. Some challengers did not question the president's initial authority under the law, but instead argued that later expansions or extensions of tariffs may have gone beyond statutory limits. These cases moved through lower federal courts before eventually reaching the Supreme Court. What did the Supreme Court decide? According to reports, the Supreme Court determined that certain tariff actions exceeded the authority delegated by Congress. The court's ruling appears to clarify that while presidents have significant flexibility in trade matters, that flexibility is not unlimited. The decision emphasizes constitutional structure. Under the U.S. Constitution, Congress holds the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Over time, Congress has delegated portions of that authority to the executive branch. However, the court's ruling suggests that such delegation must remain within clear boundaries. Importantly, the ruling does not eliminate all presidential trade powers. Instead, it narrows how broadly those powers can be interpreted. Legal analysts say the decision may require future administrations, regardless of political party, to act with more precise statutory justification when imposing broad economic measures. Economic impact. The economic consequences could be significant. Businesses that paid billions in import duties may seek refunds if certain tariffs are officially invalidated. The process for that, however, could be legally complex and take time. Markets often respond quickly to major Supreme Court rulings, especially when trade and global supply chains are involved. However, the long-term economic impact will depend on how policymakers respond. Some domestic industries that benefited from tariff protection may now face increased international competition. On the other hand, companies that rely on imported materials may see cost relief. Economists caution that trade systems are deeply interconnected. Even limited changes can ripple across sectors such as manufacturing, retail, agriculture, and technology. Political and constitutional implications beyond economics. This case touches on a long-standing debate, reminding observers of how the separation of powers functions in practice. The Constitution assigns commerce regulation to Congress, yet over decades, Congress has granted presidents emergency and strategic trade authorities. This ruling may signal that the court intends to more carefully scrutinize broad executive actions, especially those with large economic consequences. Some legal scholars view this as part of a broader judicial trend toward reinforcing clearer limits on executive power. Others see it simply as statutory interpretation specific to the trade laws involved. Either way, future presidents may face stricter legal guardrails when implementing sweeping tariff programs. Reactions. Reactions have been mixed and largely along policy lines. Supporters of the original tariffs argue they were designed to address long-standing trade imbalances and protect key industries. Critics maintain that while trade enforcement is important, it must remain within legal boundaries established by Congress. Business groups are closely monitoring how the ruling will be implemented. Lawmakers may now consider whether to revise trade statutes to clarify executive authority going forward. What happens next? Several questions remain. Will Congress amend trade laws to provide clearer guidance? Will affected companies pursue compensation? How will current and future administrations adjust their strategies? Legal rulings of this magnitude often lead to further litigation and policy adjustments. Trade policy is rarely static. It evolves with economic conditions, political priorities, and international developments. Final thoughts. This Supreme Court decision represents more than a debate about tariffs. It highlights the ongoing negotiation between different branches of government over who has authority in critical areas of national policy. Regardless of political perspective, the ruling underscores the importance of constitutional structure and legal clarity. We will continue following developments to see how this shapes U.S. trade policy in the months and years ahead. If you found this breakdown helpful, stay tuned for more in-depth, balanced analysis of major global legal and political stories.